So I was doing some stocking stuffers for my vintage computer enthusiast friends, and I thought I'd share actually some of my picks because I struggle to find them, and I don't know, hopefully a couple of you will find this interesting. But before I do that, let me just share what I also find to be a lot of fun to make for the holidays are these card kits, these flat pack puzzles. And I really enjoy doing things like the sled and the reindeer. I'll mention I have not found a great vintage computing kit, so I guess I'm complaining a little bit in this one too, that I wish there was one. So maybe down the road you'll see an Apple II or a fun retro computer card kit, but I still think these are worth mentioning briefly because they're quick to make and you can put them in a card. The sled and reindeer were probably my favorites. Had a little trouble assembling the gingerbread house, even with the lower tolerances. And I also had a stuffed and mounted reindeer, which I thought was a little rustic and fun, although I don't remember that part in the reindeer story. But anyway, I just found those to be charming and worth mentioning in terms of ideas for the holidays. But to get to the list, let me start with number 3, I suppose, which is this giant monstrosity I printed. It's a Helping Hands system, and these little bendable tubes I purchased on Amazon. I'll make a link to that, and they're pretty cheap. There are versions that you can entirely 3D print. I just chose these because they have the little nozzles on the end. You can hot glue all sorts of stuff into them. Probably going to do alligator clips for most of these, but yeah, you can put a little magnifying glass in there, whatever you want. I'll have fun doing that, and I made one for myself because I find myself working and repairing on all sorts of boards. As you know, many of these capacitors are dead, dying, and almost always just need to be replaced out of habit. So having a good pair of helping hands is kind of a necessity in my mind for repairing a lot of these old consoles, which just always need repairing. All right, so number 2, I'd like to talk about cases. I build a ton of cases for these little boards and accessories that I have for my 8-bit computers, in particular the Commodore. I find because it has both a user port and a cartridge port that it just has a ton of accessories built in. For example, or built in, or at least made for it. The one I found particularly helpful recently was the Petscii Robots adapter for the Super Nintendo controller. That raw board, trying to yank it in and out, it's sharp on my fingers, and it was not pleasant. So, built a little 3D case for that, and boom, it comes in and out so much easier. So, just on a practical level, it helps out a lot. So, and it's a lot cleaner, keeps your boards covered. I did something similar for a Zoom floppy. I have that board that was all naked, and it has a case now. And I think one of the things that I have enjoyed picking up most recently and making case for was the Greaseweazle. So I gotta educate myself a little bit about it before I speak on it, but it does seem like a really cool tool to be able to read and write floppies from just about any system. So I'm excited to use that, and I think the Greaseweazle itself is a great tool for retro computer enthusiasts. So I suppose if you really love someone, go ahead and get them the board. But we often know people that have a lot of these boards, and whether it's a Zoom floppy or any of the things I've mentioned. So I find just making these cases really do make it a finished product and make it even a little bit more usable in certain cases. And also I really enjoyed the little Commodore Wi-Fi adapter that you can use. Someone made this years ago, so it's a really early 3D print thing, but I just thought it was neat, so as an example. Now, my number 1 pick that I think is just fun, doesn't take a lot of filament, doesn't take any planning or extra parts. It is the Cap'n Crunch Bosun whistle. So this thing is legendary and has a lot of fun stories behind it. It was, I guess, originally discovered by a phone freak named Sid Bernay. Hope I'm getting that right. And infamously shared through a gentleman named John Draper, who went by the name Cap'n Crunch.
Hi, this is John Draper here. I have with me right here the Captain Crunch whistle. And if you hold your finger right there, usually the phone freak people would kind of blow into it. A phone freak person is a person that kind of plays with the telephone. You do this. That tone is the Achilles heel of the almighty AT&T Ma Bell.
So he was featured in an Esquire article that I guess a young Steve Wozniak read and was impressed with. Ended up meeting this John Draper, aka Cap'n Crunch gentleman, and developed something called a blue box, which was able to hack the phone lines. I wish I knew more about it to speak authoritatively on it, but lots of great videos on it. The point being that this was the start of the hacker community. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but this was a part of a community who enjoyed discovering Ma Bell's systems and how to exploit them. So this Esquire article is interesting as well because a young Steve Wozniak took a lot of interest in it and developing one of the pieces of technology mentioned in it called a blue box, which had the ability to make free phone calls and do some other things.
So I've got 2 blue boxes here. We're going to play 2600 and see if the pitch is the same. I would say they're right on. I would say that whistle generates a perfect 2600 hertz tone.
So there's a lot of great stories around that blue box, and I'll probably end this video with one. But the history of these phone phreakers themselves and the community they made, and eventually the systems they built, like the Apple I and Apple II as an example. So I find this simple, silly toy whistle found in a cereal box in the late 60s to be a super fun story. It's a cute whistle and just a great conversation piece and real simple to make. Doesn't take a lot of filament, and I have made, as you can see, a bunch. So I'm going to be putting these in as many stockings as I can find. People who aren't even really retro computer enthusiasts, I think, enjoy this story. It's a fun story. In the sense of people discovering this system. Infamously, a young blind kid, I guess, had perfect pitch and was able to generate these tones on command, and promptly arrested and prosecuted. So, anywho, that story probably deserves its own video, but for now, we'll close it out here. I just think these are all either helpful or fun ideas that I haven't really seen compiled. So the last thing I'll mention is that story I was talking about in regards to young Wozniak and a blue box and a rapscallion Steve Jobs whose car broke down. And, well, I'll let Wozniak tell the rest of the story.
After a late night in a pizza parlor with Captain Crunch, Steve Jobs and I had to drive home for an hour to Steve's house. So as we're driving home, Steve's car broke down. And we went to a payphone, and we were nervous. We thought we'll call Captain Crunch for a ride, but we'll call him with the blue box. But we don't know how to use blue boxes on payphones for sure. So we got the operator going, and we kind of tried it, and she came on the line in the middle of the call, and Steve hung up the phone. And we tried it again, saying it's a data call or something. She came on the line in the middle of the call, and we got all scared, so we put money in. Now the cops showed up. Oh, boy. And Steve's hand was shaking, but the cops, we were really long-haired then, the cops thought we had drugs or something, so they started looking with the flashlight in the bushes. Steve managed to get me the blue box, and I got it in my pocket. And then a cop frisked us, and he pulled the blue box out of my pocket. And he said, "What is this?" I said, "It's an electronic music synthesizer. You push the buttons, 1, 2, 3, beep, 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 beep. It makes music." "Ah, what's the orange button for?" Steve Jobs said, "That's for calibration." That was the one that seizes the phone line. And a second cop comes, and he takes the blue box. And we know that the operator's called the cops. And the cop says, "Well, what is it?" I said, "It's an electronic music synthesizer." And Steve Jobs says, "The orange button's for calibration." Cop says, "Where's the computer plug-in?" Steve says, "It's inside." You know, ridiculous BS. We knew we were caught. So the cops put us in the back seat of their car, and they held the blue box in the front seat, and they started driving us out to our broken down car. The cop turned around, handed me the blue box, and said, "A guy named Moog beat you to it." You can't make up stories better than the truth. And Steve even BS'd him then and said, "Oh, he sent us the schematics."
Let's think here. You got the Commodore, you got the cases, you got the Petscii Robots, you got the Commodore, you got the... Okay.